Hello, welcome to my January wrap-up. I did not dress up for you today. We don't dress up for each other here on this channel, but I've got 33 books to talk about today, 3 DNFs, 30 things I finished and completed and read in the month of January, and I don't really have that much time to film this in. I'd rather be watching the Olympics, but this has to get done. So let's get started. We're gonna speed around this because I don't want to be doing it, but I'm in a mood today. I'm so sorry. But first up for the month we read, hang on, no, you need to come this way because you're focused on the wrong thing. Come over here. There we go. First up for the month I read Hometown Haunts by a bunch of authors, edited by Poppy Nwosu. This is a Lava's YA collection of horror shorts, and I really enjoyed this. Some stories I loved a lot better than others. It feels a million lifetimes ago now, so I could not tell you which stories I actually loved more than others, but this is a pretty short collection. If you can get your hands on it, I would 100% recommend it, especially if you're Australian. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars. I also read Sunreach by Brandon Sanderson, and later in the month I also read Redawn, which are 2 of 3 novellas that take place around the Skywood series. The 3rd of the novellas takes place after book 3, and I haven't read book 3 yet, so I haven't got to that one yet, but it's on my radar. It's even on my Kindle, to be precise, ready to go. But yeah, I read Sunreach and gave it 4 stars, and Redawn was also 4 stars. These I think are super necessary for the overall scheme of the plot of the world. It's doing a lot. So if you haven't read these, I would recommend them. I'm excited to read Cytonic. The series is a YA sci-fi series that's really like classic sci-fi, and it's fun. It's fun. Those are both 4 stars. Next up I listened to the audiobook for Monstrous Heart by Claire McKenna. This is a fantasy romance, I guess you'd say. Set in around this lighthouse. Our main character is Arden, and she's sent to this lighthouse because she has a specific type of blood magic that can be used to keep this light running. And there's a mysterious like fisherman who hunts kraken, who the town says he killed his wife. It's very romantic but also dramatic, and a lot of political stuff going on. My problem with this is the elements that I think were just like not handled well in the fantasy end. The romance was great. On the fantasy end, we have a blood magic in the first instance, and then like selective breeding and eugenics is a key plot point that's not like deeply interrogated. Like, yeah, serious eugenics, and they even call it eugenics, and if this was just a trashy romance and you took out all the plot, I think it would have been not trashy. If it was a simple romance and you took out a lot of the fantasy plot elements, I think this would have been better. Like if you just had rugged kraken hunter, girl in a tower, and you didn't investigate it that deeply, like try and build all this plot, I think it would have been better, because the plot was like built, but it also like didn't do enough to not feel icky. Like, why eugenics? This didn't need eugenics. Anyway, I read this. I gave it 3 stars, but really it's like a 2.5 rounded up. Then I read Lost in the Netherwood by Aidan Thomas. This is a Peter Pan retelling set in this town where, I was going to say a particular town, but I can't remember what particular town. Wendy and her brothers, John and Michael, went missing from their home when she was like 12, and then she came back, like reappeared like a year later, and they never found her brothers, and she's always not had any memory of her time while she was missing, and now new boys are going missing, and she's seeing like meeting up with this guy who claims to be Peter Pan, the man or boy in her mother's stories that she used to tell her brothers. This I actually really loved, a lot more than like a lot of people. I feel like this got a lot of bad rap, and a lot of people saying it wasn't a good Peter Pan retelling. I think this was a good Peter Pan retelling. I do think it didn't lean into Peter being an asshole enough. Like, Peter's an asshole. Like, it kind of took a very forgiving view of Peter. But like, in regards to a Peter Pan retelling, I thought it was done really well. It is like thriller-esque. I wouldn't say it's a heavy thrill. Like, there's those elements, but it's in a very YA way, kind of whimsical. And I had a blast with this. I thought it was really good, really poignant. I cared a lot, and I liked the things it did. I thought they were smart. So, don't know what everyone else was complaining about. I do think it's nothing at all like Cemetery Boys, which maybe was everybody's problem. It's nothing like Cemetery Boys, Aiden Thomas's first book, but this was so good, in my opinion. I gave it a solid 4 stars. Then we have a piece of poetry, or a book of poetry that I read, which was Polluter by Melissa... It's here. I didn't write it down. I'm in a rush. I'm not going to look it up, but this is an investigation of like womanhood, especially as a Latina woman, and I really enjoyed this. It was short, and I didn't always relate, which is fair, but like sometimes, like, I like poetry more when I can like get a visceral reaction, and I didn't always have a visceral reaction, but overall I thought it was a really good collection. I gave it 4 stars. I also read Along the Saltway Sea by A. Deborah Baker. I gave this 5 stars. This is the follow-up to Over the Woodward Wall, which I really enjoyed, and they kind of, these books are present in Middle Game, if you've read Middle Game. So they're totally separate, but like, this is the book that is in Middle Game. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really intriguing. I liked a lot of the characters. I liked a lot of the settings. It's very much a 2 children go on an adventure story, and the adventure is very nonsensical, but it was so much fun. 5 stars, and it's super short. Then I listened to The Tropic of Serpents by Marie Brennan. This is a the second book in a, what's the series called? It's like the Chronicles of Lady Trent, or the Biographies of Lady Trent. It's the first one's A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent, and they're like fake memoirs. I gave this 4 stars. I had a really great time with it, and I really enjoyed it, but I do think there's something to be said for leaning into the white saviorism trope a little bit. Like, it's not fully that, but it's like, it's set in could not even tell you. So it's assuming there's dragons, and it's a fantasy world that's like mimicking real world. And so basically everything's the same except there's dragons, and the places are called different things. But the main character's like in a version of England. It's very British colonialist, going to places to like see the natives a little bit, a lot. Very, I'm a sociologist. Yeah, going to do ethnographies of foreign groups and stuff, but like, she's focusing on the dragons. But in this, they go to a like African-esque area, and she like meets the natives in the woods. Like, it's just a little bit like, it's self-critical of that, but like it feeds right into that. So I don't know, it's just a bit cool. I'm just filming a video, but you guys go ahead.
I'm just leaving here because Brayden and I are going to go to Kmart and have a look at rugs.
Okay. My brother-in-law is mowing, so it might be loud. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, so that was my main fault with this. It was decent. We'll see how that tomorrow goes. I haven't quite started yet. Next up, I listened to A Tale of Witchcraft by Chris Colfer. This is the second book in this series, and is a prequel series to the Land of Magic, Land of Stories. I really like this series. It was a good audiobook. Chris Colfer narrates it, so it was really good fun. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I DNF'd When We Were Strangers by, is it Lauren Namey? I can't remember, it's here. I despised this from like 20 seconds into the audiobook. The premise of this is that the main character's father dies, and she finds out that he was about to walk out to go live with his mistress, but she covers it up so mum doesn't know. So he's dead from like a heart attack or a stroke or a car accident, I can't remember, and then she's like getting involved in all the drama. Hated the writing style immediately, and I remember it being really fat phobic. So I DNF'd this like within 12 minutes of the audiobook. On that topic, I also DNF'd Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. We were reading this as part of Paige's book club, and I just did not like it. I don't know why. I don't know what about it I didn't like. It was just boring. And I just didn't care. This is obviously a retelling of Ariadne, and I just could not get invested. I did read all of Boneshard Emperor, this chunky boy. I gave this 4 stars. This is a sequel to Boneshard Daughter, so I won't tell you much about what this particular one is about. But this series investigates or follows Lynn and what's the man's name? I can't remember. This seems like literally a lifetime ago when I read this. It's a Southeast Asian inspired fantasy world. There's bone magic, where bone shard magic, where shards of bone, often like taken from the skull of living people, can be used to power creatures. And in book 1, Lynn is the daughter of the emperor, and she's like trying to figure things out. Obviously this one is a lot further along than that. It's super chunky. It took me a while. I didn't love it. Some things kind of played out just a bit too conveniently in my opinion, and I really didn't buy the romance. I gave it 4 stars. It was good. I will continue the series. I just didn't love this installment. Next up I listened to We Were Restless Things by Cole Nagamatsu. This is a speculative fiction, kind of like fabulous contemporary, following Noemi and what is Jonas? Maybe Jonas. Noemi and Jonas are like stepbrother and sister. They live in the same house. Jonas is new into town, and they have this weird romance while she's dealing with like the death of her, I'd say like high school sweetheart. They were like best friends, and I think they were dating, but everyone thought they were. This, I just didn't get what it was trying to do. I didn't understand why any of the specific plot points were happening and how they tied back to the purpose of the story, which meant it was kind of cheap. Especially like they were step siblings and they were having a relationship. It was very weird. 3 stars. There were some really cool individual scenes in this, and I really liked the ace representation in this. It was really well done in my opinion, but I just didn't get the book as a whole. I also listened to In the Watchful City by S.G.U. This is a sci-fi that was very bizarre, a bit too high level for me, but individual scenes I really appreciated. It was very much about like the like an observant state, and it's like living within a like hyper observant state. There were some things I really appreciated. I think overall the sci-fi was a little bit too hard for me. I gave it 4 stars though. Like, it was really powerful. I also reread The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett. I was buddy reading this with April from Aprilis Maximus, and we're continuing the series, which is so exciting. I've read like the first 20, but I'm jumping back to reread with her. This is the first book in the Discworld, chronological in publication order, and I love it. This time I gave it a 4 stars. First time I gave it a 5 stars. I do think its plot is a little bit all over the place, but it's just so fun. Then I read The God of Lost Words by A.J. Hackwith, which is the 3rd and final book in the Hell's Library trilogy, and this blew me away. I can't talk about it in any detail because it's obviously book 3, but in the first book we're following Claire, who's the librarian of the Unwritten Library, which is a library in hell of all the books that never got written. This series is stunning. I would 100% recommend it. The polyamory representation by this 3rd book was just chef's kiss. I loved it so much, so much. Talking about polyamory representation, I also read The House of Always by Jen Lyons. This is the 4th book in a big fantasy series. The 5th one comes out really soon. And it's a wild, multi-perspective, multi-timeline story that's kind of told like epistolary, and it's just so good. This series, phenomenal. I gave this one 5 stars. It was a really good continuation. I would 100% recommend the series. We followed Kieran primarily, but also a lot of other characters who is like forsworn to either save the world or destroy it, and the series just builds and builds and builds. I can't wait for the finale. I also read Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazemian. This is a contemporary novel set in the 80s, I think, maybe early 90s. I think it's the 80s, 1989. And we're following Razor, Judy, and Art. And Art is an out and proud gay guy. Judy is his like best Judy, like he's a straight best girlfriend, but her uncle's gay. She's really like involved in the community. She's like capital A ally. And we also follow Razor, who is a Iranian immigrant and new to town and is gay but doesn't know it, and is like learning that about himself, but he's trying to like avoid pressing triggers with his family and making waves at school. So he dates Judy, and it's like, it's a complicated love triangle, and I really enjoyed this so much. It was so heartbreaking. It's also obviously set around the AIDS crisis, and it was so good. I gave this, what did I end up giving this? 5 stars. I'm really excited for Abdi Nazemian's next book as well, which is coming out like next month. I'm so excited. Next up, I listened to White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson, which is a YA thriller horror. It's a haunted house story, but it's kind of more thrillery. I think if you really liked Ace of Spades, you could really like this. It's like Ace of Spades' spooky cousin. This talks a lot about race and especially how it impacts how towns are constructed and built, and how white supremacy acts in those towns. One common critique of this is that the main character's addicted to weed, and it's really like a key focus of the story in a like very overwhelming way. But I personally thought it was really good. I listened to the audiobook. Like, I thought it felt real rather than overdone, in my opinion, but I do not have personal experience to back that up. I really loved it though, so I enjoyed it a lot. I do think it was so unsettling, and I was on the edge of my seat for so much of this. I gave it 4 stars. I also gave 4 stars to Major Detours by Zachary Sergi. This is a choose your own adventure novel. It's super queer. I had a great time with this, and it follows tarot, and it's this group of teenagers kind of going on a quest to find these missing tarot cards from their grandmother's deck, and it's just so good. I love a choose your own adventure, but it didn't feel like I was drawn too much away from the center of the story by the choose your own adventure. It was well constructed. I gave it 4 stars. The other DNF I had for the month was The Devil Makes 3 by Tori Bovolino. I can't even remember why I DNF'd this. I think I was really bored, but also the book like doesn't know what it's trying to be. It's a YA, but it doesn't read like a YA. It reads to me like an adult romance, like a rom-com but with magic, the way something like The XX, which I've been reading recently and will be coming to you in a vlog, reads. It felt like a rom-com in the setup and the way the tone of the characters spoke. They didn't feel like teenagers, but they were teenagers. Felt like it should have been a college rom-com with this magical element that was throwing a spanner in the works for the romance, and instead it was YA. The characters were teenagers, but they shouldn't have been. Like, they didn't read like that. The magic was weird. It didn't make sense in the world. I just didn't buy it, and I was struggling. It was like the book didn't know what it was trying to be. I gave it a DNF. I stopped. I also listened to The Spies That Bind by Ali Carter, which is a short story in the Gallagher Girls world. I honestly don't know if I've read this before. It says it's an Audible original, but it felt really familiar, so I'm not sure if I was rereading it or reading it for the first time. I gave it 4 stars. It was a cute little prequel, so if you like prequels, it was really fun. If you like Gallagher Girls, which is obviously a series about a group of like a spy school. It's so good. I also listened to Mem by Bethany C. Morrow, which is another short audiobook, and this one is a sci-fi following along the idea that you can pull out a memory and it becomes like a fully formed person, but they just like repeat that same moment over and over again. But the main character is a memory, but she has a full thing. I gave Mem 4 stars. I also read Daylight, which was a collection of poems by Roya Marsh. This one I loved to pieces. It was hard, it was impactful. 5 stars for this. I can't like talk about it in any detail other than like it features, it's from a black author and black poet, and it explores like black girls growing up. So good. I also listened to For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. This was a wild audiobook. I loved it. It was like beat after beat after beat. It's not like a mystery kind of thriller. It's a like thriller. You know exactly what's going on the whole time, but figuring out how like everything connects, wild. Like seeing each beat like get blocked and stopped on the edge of my seat the whole time. Loved this audiobook. 5 stars. Would recommend it as an audiobook. I also read Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Core. This I didn't love. It's a horror set in a haunted house in Japan. Haunted mansion. It's very much horror. It's very dark. For me, the pacing was a little off. I just didn't quite buy it the whole way, but like it was decent. 3 stars. It was very gory. I also read Redemptor by Jordan Afueko, which is the sequel to Raybearer. This is a West African fantasy. The first one follows Tarasai, who her father is a genie and her mother like imbued her with a secret wish to kill the king or the prince. And she doesn't really know that, but it's like in her, and she joins the prince's like retinue, and it's a bunch of children that are all together to like form this ray bond with the prince king, and her curse is set to go off like when she gets joined, and she's destined to kill him. This I think was not my favorite of the series. Like the mystery and pacing and thrills of the first one were what I really loved. This one was much more introspective and a kind of investigation of mental health and power and doing good by the populace. It was good. It just was missing something special that Raybearer had. So I gave this 4 stars. I also read The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, which I loved to pieces. Everything I thought I was missing from the first Tasha Suri book, Empire of Sand. This was so much everything I wanted it to be. This is a sapphic fantasy, but really like fantasy just with a sapphic little boop thrown in. It's not a romance, it's fantasy, and it's Indian inspired, but in a fantasy world. And we follow Malini, who's the sister of the king, and he wanted to sacrifice her up on a pyre, and she ran away. Basically she said no, I'm not doing that, but she was meant to go willingly, and so instead he locks her in a tower, like, you'll go willingly after you've been locked here forever. And she's out to try and get her older brother, who abdicated the throne, back on the throne. And then we also follow Priya, who is a maid who ends up like connecting with Malini, and she has a secret magic that everyone with that magic was supposed to have died, and she still has it. This was so good. It was slow, but in that way that like you need for the world building. It was an adventure. I loved it to pieces. This was 5 stars. Another 5 stars was They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This is a thriller, and again one where you kind of know everything going in from the start. We follow Scarlett and Carly, and Scarlett it's dual timeline kind of thing, dual perspective, and Scarlet is a teacher at this university killing men who do terrible things like rape girls, rape women, and Carly is a student dealing with like, she's kind of like learning about how these power struggles happen, and so Scarlet's out there happily murdering men, and this was so good. The twist, impeccable. I loved this so much. Short chapters, it was really fun and easy to fly through. 5 stars. It was so good. You've rooted for Scarlet so much, even though she's a psycho. I also read Shame is an Ocean I Swim Across by Mary Lambert, which was a collection of poetry. This was a classic example of I should have connected with this, but I didn't. This talks a lot about body dysmorphia, being fat, having fatness like as a core part of like your depression. The main character, Mary Lambert, the singer, is fat and bipolar, and these things intersect in a way that really affected her life, and the poetry was beautiful. But I am a fat person that is not in my, like, I'm not depressed about being fat, and I find it really hard to be in that perspective because I'm like, but I don't get it. Like, I get it intellectually, I don't understand it. My brain does not do that to me, and I couldn't relate, and I wanted to so badly. They got a little heavy-handed. The poetry wasn't as lyrical as I was hoping for. It just was not for me. I give it a 3 stars. Then I read Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente, which is a short, like a novella. I was gonna say short story, it's a novella. It's a horror. I don't know how to describe this without spoiling the whole reveal, but this was so good. It's a very like innocent maiden kind of tale, and it was fascinating. I loved it. I was hooked every moment. Stunning. Read this. My final audiobook for the month was The Wild Ones by Nafisa Azad, and this is a story from a couple of different perspectives, including like a second person, third person we kind of vibe. It follows a group of girls who are the wild ones, and they've had terrible things happen to them, and they're kind of now magic set outside space helping other girls. My problems with this were mainly, like, I thought the writing was beautiful, I loved the characters, the pacing was kind of strange for me, and it talked about food a lot, like detailed descriptions of all the meals they were eating, and I didn't quite get why it fed into the plot. I had a good time with this. I didn't love it, like it didn't evoke things in me that I wanted it to, but maybe this was because I listened to the audiobook and didn't read it with my eyes. Overall, I gave this 3 stars. And the final thing I'm going to briefly mention, even though I haven't rated it, is Words of Radiance Part 1, which I finished right before the end of the month. I'm currently reading Part 2 in February, and slowly, slowly. I obviously didn't rate Part 1 because I'm rating each book as a whole, but I had a good time. I did finish this in January. Look after my February wrap-up to find out my thoughts. Those are all the books that I read in the month of January. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for my chaotic mood and putting up with it. Thanks again. If you've read any of these, comment down below your thoughts and feelings. I'd love to hear them. If you want to do it secretly, code words are fine. Like, I have read them, I'll know what you're talking about. And thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon with another one. Bye.